Hello, today we'll be reading Judges 18 through 21. Just want to get a little prefix here. I have had dyslexia my entire life, so there are some words in here that may be difficult for me to read, but we will get through it together. So bear with me. We're going to start in chapter 18. In those days, Israel had no king, and in those days the tribe of the Danites was seeking a place of their own where they might settle, because they had not yet come into an inheritance among the tribes of Israel. So the Danites sent 5 of their leading men from Zorah and Eshtaol to spy out the land and explore it. These men represented all the Danites. They told them, "Go and explore the land." So they entered the hill country of Ephraim and came to the house of Micah, where they spent the night. When they were near Micah's house, they recognized the voice of the young Levite. So they turned in there and asked him, "Who brought you here? What are you doing in this place? Why are you here?" He told them what Micah had done for him and said, "He has hired me, and I am his priest." Then they said to him, "Please inquire of God to learn whether our journey will be successful." The priest answered them, "Go in peace. Your journey has the Lord's approval." So the 5 men left and came to Laish, where they saw that the people were living in safety, like the Sidonians, at peace and secure. And since their land lacked nothing, they were prosperous. Also, they lived in a long way from the Sidonians and had no relationship with anyone else. When they returned to Zorah and Eshtaol, their fellow Danites asked them, How did you find things?" They answered, "Come on, let's attack them. We have seen the land and it's very good. Aren't you going to do something? Don't hesitate to go there and take it over. When you get there, you will find an unsuspecting people and a spacious land that God has put into your hands, a land that lacks nothing whatsoever." Then 600 men of the Danites, armed for battle, set out for Zorah and Eshtaol. On their way, they set up a camp near Kiriath Jearim in Judah. This is why the place west of Kiriath Jearim is called Mahanadan to this day. From there they went on to the hill country of Ephraim and came to Micah's house. Then the 5 men who had spied out the land of Laish called to their fellow Danites, "Do you know that one of these houses has an ephod, some household gods, and an image overlaid with silver? Now you know what to do." So they turned in there and went to the house of the young Levite at Micah's place, and greeted him. The 600 Danites, armed for battle, stood at the entrance of the gate. The 5 men who had spied out the land went inside and took the idol, the ephod, and the household gods, while the priest and the 600 armed men stood at the entrance of the gate. When the 5 men went into Micah's house and took the idol and the ephod and the household gods, the priest said to them, "What are you doing?" They answered him, "Be quiet. Don't say a word. Come with us and be our father and priest. Isn't it better that you serve a tribe and clan in Israel as priest rather than just one man's household?" The priest was very pleased. He took the ephod, the household god, the idol, and went along with the people, putting their little children, their livestock, and their possessions in front of them. They turned away and left. When they had gone some distance from Micah's house, the men who lived near Micah were called together and overtook the Danites. As they shouted after them, Danites turned and said to Micah, "What's the matter with you, that you called out your men to fight?" He replied, "You took the gods I made and my priest and went away. What else do I have? How can you ask what's the matter with you?" The Danites answered, "Don't argue with us, or some of the men may get angry and attack you, and you and your family will lose your lives." So the Danites went their way, and Micah, seeing that they were too strong for him, turned around and went back home. Then they took what Micah had made and his priest and went on to Laish against the people at peace and secure. They attacked them with the sword and burned down their city. There was no one to rescue them because they lived a long way from Sidon and had no relationship with anyone else. The city was in a valley near Beth Rehob. The Danites rebuilt the city and settled there. They named it Dan after their ancestor Dan, who was born to Israel. Through the city used to be called Laish. There the Danites set up for themselves the idol, and Jonathan, son of the Gershom, and the son of Moses, and his sons were priests for the tribes of Dan until the time of the captivity of land. They continued to use the idol Micah had made all the time the house of God was in Shiloh. Chapter 19. In those days Israel had no king. Now a Levite who lived in the remote area in the hill country of Ephraim took a concubine from Bethlehem, but she was unfaithful to him. She left him and went back to her parents' home in Bethlehem, Judah. After she had been there for 4 months, her husband went to her to persuade her to return. He had with him his servant and 2 donkeys. She took him into her parents' home, and when her father saw him, he gladly welcomed him. His father-in-law, the woman's father, prevailed on him to stay, so he remained with him 3 days, eating and drinking and sleeping there. On the 4th day, they got up early, and he prepared to leave. But the woman's father said to his son-in-law, "Refresh yourself with something to eat. Then you can go." So the 2 of them sat down to eat and drink together. Afterward, the woman's father said, "Please stay tonight and enjoy yourself." And when the man got up to go, his father-in-law persuaded him. So he stayed there that night. On the morning of the 5th day, when he rose to go, the woman's father said, "Refresh yourself. Wait till afternoon." So the 2 of them ate together. Then when the man with his concubine and his servant got up to leave, his father-in-law, the woman's father, said, "Now look, it's almost evening. Spend the night here. The day is nearly over. Stay and enjoy yourself. Early tomorrow morning, you can get up and be on your way home." But unwilling to stay another night, the man went towards Jebus, that is, Jerusalem, with his 2 saddled donkeys and his concubine. When they were near Jebus, and the day had almost gone, the servant said to his master, "Come, let's stop at this city of the Jebusites and spend the night." His master replied, "No, we won't go into any city whose people are not Israelites. We will go on Jebah." He added, "Come, let's try to reach Jebah and Ramah and spend the night in one of those places." So they went on, and the sun set as they neared Jebah in Benjamin. There they stopped to spend the night. They went and sat in the city square, but no one took them in for the night. That evening an old man from the hill country of Ephraim, who was living in Jebah, the inhabitants of the place where Benjamites, came in from his work in the fields. When he looked and saw the travelers in the city square, the old man asked, "Where are you going? Where did you come from?" He answered, "We are on our way to Bethlehem in Judah, to a remote area in the hill country of Ephraim, where I live. I've been to Bethlehem in Judah, and now I'm going to the house of the Lord. No one has taken me in for the night. We have both straw and fodder for our donkeys, and bread and wine for ourselves, your servants, me, the woman, and the young men with us. We don't need anything." "You're welcome at my house," the old man said. "Let me supply whatever you need. Only don't spend the night in the square." So he took him into his house and fed his donkeys. After they had washed their feet, they had something to eat and drink. While they were enjoying themselves, some of the wicked men of the city surrounded the house, pounding on the door. They shouted to the old man who owned the house, "Bring out the man who came house so we can have sex with him." The owner of the house went outside and said to them, "No, my friends, do not be so vile. Since this man is my guest, don't do this outrageous thing. Look, here is my virgin daughter and his concubine. I'll bring them out to you now, and you can use them and do to them whatever you wish. But as for this man, do not do such an outrageous thing." But the men would not listen to him. So the man took his concubine and sent her outside to them, and they raped her and abused her throughout the night. And at dawn, they let her go. At daybreak, the woman went back to the house where her master was staying, fell down at the door, lay there until daylight. When her master got up in the morning and opened the door of the house and stepped out to continue on his way, there lay his concubine, fallen in the doorway of the house, with her hands on the threshold. He said to her, "Get up, let's go." Then there was no answer. Then the man put her on his donkey and set out for home. When he reached home, he took a knife and cut up his concubine limb by limb into 12 parts and sent them into all the areas of Israel. Everyone who saw it was saying to one another, "Such a thing has never been seen or done, not since the day the Israelites came up out of Egypt. Just imagine. We must do something, so speak up." Chapter 20. Then all Israel from Dan to Beersheba and from the land of Gilead came together as one and assembled before the Lord at Meshbah. The leaders of all the people of the tribes of Israel took their places in the assembly of God's people, 400,000 men armed with swords. The Benjamites heard that the Israelites had gone up on Meshbah. Then the Israelites said, "Tell us how this awful thing happened." So the Levite, the husband of the murdered woman, said, "I and my concubine came to Gibeah in Benjamin to spend the night. During the night, the men of Gibeah came after me and surrounded the house, intending to kill me. They raped my concubine, and she died. I took my concubine, cut her into pieces, and sent one piece to each region of Israel's inheritance, because they committed the lewd and outrageous act in Israel. Now, all you Israelites, speak up and tell me what you have decided to do." All the men rose up together as one, saying, "None of us will go home. Not one of us will return to his house. But now this is what we'll do to Gibeah. We'll go up against it in the order decided by casting lots. We'll take 10 men out of every 100 from all the tribes in Israel, and 100 from the 1,000, and 1,000 from the 10,000, to provisions for the army. Then the army arrives at Gibeah in Benjamin. It can give them what they deserve for this outrageous act done in Israel." So all the Israelites got together and united as one against the city. The tribes of Israel sent messengers through the tribe of Benjamin, saying, "What about this awful crime that was committed among you? Now turn those wicked men at Gibeah over to us, so that we can put them to death and purge the evil from Israel." But the Benjamites did not listen to their fellow Israelites. From their towns they came together to Gibeah and to fight against the Israelites. At once the Benjamites mobilized 26,000 swordsmen from their towns, in addition to the 700 able young men from those living in Gibeah. Among all those soldiers there were 700 selected troops who were left-handed, each of whom could sling a stone at a hair and not miss. Israel, apart from Benjamin, mustered 400,000 swordsmen, all of them fit for battle. The Israelites went out to Bethel and inquired of God. They said, "Who of us is to go up first to fight against the Benjamites?" The Lord replied, "Judah shall go first." The next morning the Israelites got up and pitched camp near Gibeah. The Israelites went out to fight the Benjamites and took up battle positions against them at Gibeah. The Benjamites came to Gibeah and cut down 22,000 Israelites on the battlefield that day. But the Israelites encouraged one another and again took up their positions where they had stationed themselves the first day. The Israelites went up and wept before the Lord until evening. And they inquired of the Lord. They said, "Shall we go up again to fight against the Benjamites, our fellow Israelites?" The Lord answered, "Go up against them." Then the Israelites drew near to Benjamin the second day. This time, when the Benjamites came up from Gibeah to oppose them, they cut down another 18,000 Israelites, all of them armed with swords. Then all the Israelites, the whole army, went up to Bethel, and there they sat weeping before the Lord. They fasted that day until evening and presented burnt offerings and fellowship offerings to the Lord. And the Israelites inquired to the Lord. In those days the ark of the covenant of God was there, with Phinehas son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, ministering before it. They asked, "Shall we go up again to fight against the Benjamites, our fellow Israelites, or not?" The Lord responded, "Go, for tomorrow I will give them into your hands." Then Israel set an ambush against Geba. They went up against the Benjamites on the third day and took up positions against Geba, as they had done before. The Benjamites came out to meet them and were drawn away from the city. They began to inflict casualties on the Israelites, as before. So that about 30 men fell in the open field and on the roads, the one leading to Bethel and the other to Geba. While the Benjamites were saying, "We are defending them as before," the Israelites were saying, "Let's retreat and draw them away from the cities to the roads." All the men of Israel moved from their places and took up positions in Bala Tamar, and the Israelite ambush charged out in its place, on to the west of Geba. Then 10,000 of Israel's able young men made a frontal attack. The fighting was so heavy that the Benjamites did not realize how near disaster was. The Lord defeated Benjamin before Israel, and on that day the Israelites struck down 25,100 Benjamites, all armed with swords. Now the men of Israel had given way before Benjamin because they had relied on the ambush that had set near Geba. Those who had been in ambush made a sudden dash into Geba, ran out, and put the whole city to the sword. The Israelites had arranged the ambush that they should send up a great cloud of smoke from the city, and then the Israelites would counterattack. The Benjamites had begun to inflict casualties on the Israelites, about 30, and they said, "We are defeating them as in the first battle." But when the column of smoke began to rise from the city, the Benjamites turned and saw the whole city going up in smoke. Then the Israelites counterattacked, and the Benjamites were terrified because they realized that disaster had come on them. So they fled before the Israelites in the direction of the wilderness. But they could not escape the battle, and the Israelites who came out of the towns cut them down there. They surrounded the Benjamites, chased them, and easily overran them in the vicinity of Geba on the east. 18,000 Benjamites fell, all of them valiant fighters. As they turned and fled towards the wilderness to the road of Rimmon, the Israelites cut down 5,000 men along the roads. They kept pressing after the Benjamites as far as Gittim and struck down 2,000 more. On that day, 25,000 Benjamite swordsmen fell, all of them valiant fighters. But 600 of them turned and fled into the wilderness, to the rock of Rimmon, where they stayed for months. The men of Israel went back to Benjamin and put all the towns to sword, including the animals and everything else they found. All the towns they came across they set on fire. Chapter 21. The men of Israel had taken an oath of Mizpah. Not one of us will give his daughter in marriage to a Benjamite. The people went to Bethel, where they sat before God until evening, raising their voices and weeping bitterly. "Lord, God of Israel," they cried, "why has this happened to Israel? Why should one tribe be missing from Israel today?" Early the next day, the people built an altar and presented burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. Then the Israelites asked, "Who from all the tribes of Israel has failed to assemble before the Lord?" For they have taken a solemn oath that anyone who failed to assemble before the Lord in Mizpah was to be put to death. Now the Israelites grieve for the tribe of Benjamin, for their fellow Israelites. "Today one tribe is cut off from Israel," they said. "How can we provide wives for those who are left, since we have taken the oath by the Lord not to give them any of our daughters in marriage?" Then they asked, "Which one of the tribes of Israel failed to assemble before the Lord at Mizpah?" They discovered that no one from Jabesh Gilead had come to the camp for the assembly. For when they counted the people, they found that none of the people of Jabesh Gilead were there. So the assembly sent 12,000 fighting men with instructions to go to Jabesh Gilead and put to the sword those living there, including the women and children. "This is what you are to do," they said. "Kill every male and every woman who is not a virgin." They found among the people living in Jabesh Gilead 400 young women who had never slept with a man, and they took them to the camp of Shelah in Canaan. Then the whole assembly sent an offer of peace to the Benjamites at the rock of Rimmon. So the Benjamites returned at the time and were given the woman of Jabesh Gilead who had been spared. But there was not enough for all of them. The people grieved for Benjamin. because the Lord had made a gap in the tribes of Israel. And the elders of the assembly said, "With the women of Benjamin destroyed, how shall we provide wives for the men who are left? The Benjamite survivors must have heirs," they said, "so that a tribe of Israel will not be wiped out. Can't give them our daughters as wives, since we Israelites have taken this oath. Cursed be anyone who gives a wife to a Benjamite. But look, there is an annual festival of the Lord in Salah, which lies north of Bethel, east of the road that goes from Bethel to Shittim, and south of Labonah." So they instructed the Benjamites, saying, "Go and hide in the vineyards and watch." When the young women of Salah came out to join in the dancing, rush from the vineyards, and each of you seize one of them be your wife. Then return to the land of Benjamin. When their fathers or brothers complain to us, we will say to them, "Do us the favor of helping them, because we did not get wives for them during the war. You will not be guilty of breaking your oath because you did not give your daughters to them." So that is what the Benjamites did. While the young women were dancing, each man caught one and carried her off to be his wife. Then they returned to their inheritance and rebuilt their towns and settled in them. At that time, the Israelites left that place and went home to their own tribes and clans, each to his own inheritance. In those days, Israel had no king. Everyone did as they saw fit.
Hello, my friend, and welcome to Fear into Faith Global Bible Revival, where we are passionate about getting people to read the Word of God for themselves, cover to cover in a year. My name is Summer Day, and I am in the studio with Emily Houston. And let me just warn you really quick, just full disclosure, she's way too much fun, and I think this is going to be one of the funnest, craziest, wildest interviews that I've had so far.
Let's do it.
So good. Well, beautiful Emily, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from?
Sure.
Married, kids, all those things.
All the things. Okay. I am from Northwestern Hills. I still live in Northwestern Hills, Texas. I have 3 beautiful daughters. They're 6, 4, and 2.
Love it.
And I am divorced a year and a half now, about a year and a half. I married my high school sweetheart, and we were together for about 14 years. Wow. I did everything I could to stay in that marriage until there was no way that I could stay any longer. Wow. So the miracle is that I'm still alive today.
Wow. Wow. We have not had anybody on the show yet just boldly and courageously talk about that. So I'm applauding you, totally applauding you, because from what I hear of parts of the world and the church, just throwing out that D word of divorce can be a very big stigma. So thank you for just sharing that so boldly. I love it. I love it. You just finished reading in the studio.
Yes.
How was that for you?
It was great. I shared in before all of my readings that I've been dyslexic my entire life. And so reading aloud is not my favorite thing to do. So I'm coming here to do so in obedience to God and what he asked me to do. And there was some fumbling of words, but I'm humble and open and transparent, and that's who I am. So
good. And that's what we wanted. We did not want perfection on this show. And as a mom of 2 girls that are dyslexic, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it, love it, love it. That you're just like, hey, I'm going to push through this, and it might not be the best reading of this whole TV show, but I'm here to be obedient to the Lord. Yeah. So good.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm not perfect. I don't want to be perfect. I'm far from it, but through God, I have grace, and he's able to get me through the hard stuff. And I've been through some hard stuff.
Okay, well, we're going to get there in a minute. But first, I want to know, why did you say yes to this project?
I personally actually have struggled to read the entire Bible in a order of some sort. And so I have read the entire Bible. I've read it in different chunks and not in a actual, lined out reading. And so I want to be a part of that this year and reading it in a lined out reading. And every time I read, I could read the chapter of Jeremiah any chapter in the book and I can read it 3 times and I'm going to get something different every time.
Yeah.
So it's encouraging to read the Bible within a year, but it's also encouraging to continue to read it. That's not a year of reading it and you're done. It's continuing to read it because you're going to get something different. God's going to speak to you differently in whatever stage of life that you're in. So I think it's important, and I want to support anybody who wants to do that.
Why do you think it's important for people to read the Word of God? Not just go to church every Sunday, but read His Word for themselves.
Well, personally, I can speak to my life and when I was in disobedience to God and when I was not honoring the relationship that I should have with Him and putting in the effort that it takes. It's hard to, not every day do I want to read the Bible.
Yeah.
Not every day do I want to read. Some part of the Bible is just stuff I can't even pronounce.
Yeah.
So not every day do I want to do that. But when I took the step to do it every day, even when there's days that I don't want to, it made a complete change in my entire life. Wow. The way that I go about my day, the way God speaks through me, the way that He uses me, the way that I can stay in His favor, the way that when I come against trials and tribulations, how much easier I'm equipped with the weapon, which is what He gives us in the Bible and His Word, is our weapon to fight the devil.
Yeah.
And the more that I read it, and every day, even when I don't want to, wake up and do it, or I have something going on, there's all kinds of things that happen in life, especially with 3 kids under 6.
Yeah.
But I make the time to do it, and being obedient in that, I get favor. I stay in God's favor, and I have a weapon when the devil tries to come upon me, because he will. I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
And I'm equipped with my weapon, which is the Bible.
So good.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, my favorite question to ask just about everybody is the story of your God adventure, you know, if you were raised in the church or any of that. So you got this beautiful look on your face. So I'm like, ooh, hang on for the ride.
Yes, I was. Yes,
Did you grow up in the church?
I was. Yes, my parents were divorced when I was 2. My dad's Catholic, my mom's Baptist, so I was a little bit of everything, and then now I'm non-denominational.
Are you switching back and forth? So when you visited Dad, you were going to a Catholic church.
I was.
Was that like an every other weekend?
It was every other weekend. One weekend I was Catholic, the next weekend I was Baptist. And I got something from both, you know, and I'm neither of those now. I'm non-denominational. I believe in the Bible and what it says, but I learned more from that. I mean, what those experiences are. I can relate to so many more. God is using that to relate to people who are Catholic, who grew up Baptist and in the country. You know, I have such a variety in who I can reach because of the diversity my parents have given me. You know, I have an understanding of what it's like to go to Catholic church and get on your knees and pull the pew out and don't talk and you're going to get hit if, you know, and not understanding what's being said. You know, as a kid, it was difficult to understand why are these churches so different? What is the purpose? You know, and I went to a church camp and I came back from church camp. I went to church camp every summer and I came back from church camp and I sat at the dinner table and I told my mom, hey, I just want you to know, I asked Jesus in my heart while I was at church camp. And my mom's just bawling.
What was the church camp? Was it a Baptist church camp? Okay.
Yeah, it was Baptist
and how
church.
Old were you?
I was 8.
8.
No, I'm sorry. I was 9.
9. Okay. And you came home and you're like, hey, Mom, by the way. Okay. And
she was crying at the dinner table and she's like, this is the greatest thing ever. We got to go get you baptized at Wiley Baptist Church where I grew up. All my kids are going to get baptized there. And I'm like, okay, yeah, they told me to baptize is the next thing to do. So, you know, I'm very type A person. I'm like, what do we need to do? You know, how can I? And, you know, being...
You can check out the rest of this interview right here or by going to BibleRevival.tv. And if this show has blessed you, you can help us bless others by partnering with us for as little as $20 a month and help us to expand the reach of this show. We'd also like to invite you to join our Kingdom Discipleship Program, where you have an opportunity to get on weekly Bible Zoom calls with us and people around the world to deep dive into His Word. And you can check all that out at BibleRevival.tv. I'll see you next time, my friend.